Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is episode 40. It's a weird place for me to be. As I kind of joke, I think, every 10 episodes or so, and this is completely off script. You know I write most of my shit otherwise, but it's about as honest as you can get me. This is weird for me to be sitting here, and I think before I even roll into any kind of a prefab intro, which you know they all are, thanks in the biggest of possible ways to everybody, from the local scene to the not so local scene to the televised scene and everybody in between. This is about as honest as you're going to get me, and as genuine a sentiment of gratitude, I think, as you could have spill forth from me. This has been crazy, and the fact that I'm sitting here ready to bust into episode 40's introduction, which I'm sure you all can't wait for, is just insane to me. So before I say another blessed word of intro and awkwardly try to segue out of an emotional introduction, thanks, mans and women's and all you. That it wouldn't be what it is without you, and it's not a whole lot, but it's certainly come to mean a whole lot to me. So thanks, and I mean that. But here we are again. See that prefab intro coming in, celebrating another landmark. 40 episodes, 40, and here I sit this evening writing this introduction, realizing it's Julia Child's and Tom Colicchio's birthdays, which if you check Twitter, he said thank you for the happy birthday wish. So that means a lot. If Julia Child did it, that would just be creepy. So anyway, no pressure, Shawn, no pressure. But after a summer vacation, we're back. And we're going to start this off with a bang, this episode number 40. The fact that episode 40 was coming was never a surprise. Long story short, I can count, and much like my age eventually going there, hopefully, I knew this was on its way. I'm still insanely proud, like I said, and glad that it has, but I knew it was coming. It was a thing. So about a month ago, I started panicking. I really, truly did. I realized 40 was this monumental thing, and I had to do something really cool, and I started thinking of 90 different things, but felt like it's been done. And we went on our family vacation to a little place called Chatham, Massachusetts. And much like part of my heart and soul fitting in there, the perfect 40th episode guest fit right in there as well. Shellfish, specifically oysters, are one of the most amazing things in the world ever. The Coarse Grind Podcast guest Chef Isaac Toops from Top Chef this past season, as well as the comedian Jim Gaffigan, quipped that there had to be some brave person who said, "Hey, this looks like snot. I'm hungry. Let me try this," and basically made history worth living, at least to me and to my wife. But what of that shellfish? Where does it come from? How does it grow? When do you know it's right? How do you know what to do with it? I've literally had all these questions my whole life until I met tonight's guest, not 400 feet from my vacation front door. The general manager of Chatham Shellfish Company, founded in 1976. He hasn't been general manager since then, you get me. Which, if you're any good at math, though, that puts this shellfish company on their 40th anniversary. And the home of the Chatham oyster. Like you can't get it anywhere else, people. The Chatham oyster. Tonight's guest approaches his job with a passion for a high level of execution. He started with Chatham Shellfish Company in 2000, managing operations ever since, and was a 2003 University of Maine graduate with a degree in aquaculture. From personal account, I can tell you straight up that this guy knows the shellfish game inside and out, having taken a guided tour of the grounds themselves. Knowledgeable, passionate, and about as genuine a human being as you can get. I could not wait to land. See, that's a fishing play on words. This guy as a guest. So since we're both celebrating our 40th anniversaries, let's get this big, badass birthday party off to a start. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, my guest for this insanely special 40th episode, the main man behind Chatham Shellfish Company today, Mr. Stephen Wright. Mr. Stephen Wright of Chatham Shellfish Company, thank you so much for being on the show this evening. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
Excellent, excellent. No problem at all. Being one of the few guests who's like a recent memory of mine. Oftentimes they're guests I don't really have knowledge of before the call. You actually brought me back safe and sound from a boating trip. So, I mean, that's a huge tag, and I'm so super stoked to have you on. Again, episode 40, and you guys are having your 40th anniversary, correct?
That is correct.
So,
we are in our 40th year of business farming oysters in Chatham, Massachusetts.
That's terrific. And you guys started up in 76, correct?
That is correct, by my business partner, John Richards. We currently have the only oyster farm in the town of Chatham, and the town's been reluctant to change in the realm of aquaculture to allowing more aquaculture-related activities to occur within its waters, so we remain the only ones producing oysters in Chatham.
That's amazing. And, had I not been on that boat with you, I wouldn't even have known aquaculture as a word. So, I mean, you and I have a lot of ground here to cover together tonight. So, but looking and looking into the story of Stephen Wright himself, tell me about where you grew up.
I grew up in a couple of different locations. I was born in Norwalk, Connecticut, which happens to be a major oyster hub of the Northeast. Lived in Norfolk, Virginia for a short period of time, and Bristol, Maine, on the banks of the Damascotta River, which is in Maine the number one oyster producing river in the state there. Came to land in Chatham, Massachusetts after I became interested in aquaculture back in Connecticut as a high schooler, involved in a program at the Bridgeport Regional Vocational Aquaculture School, and that took me to the aquaculture degree program at the University of Maine in Orono, where I studied aquaculture and resource and agribusiness management.
So, I mean, I have to take a step back here, because for us down the New England line a bit more, this, aquaculture was a whole new term for me. Can you just, in layperson's terms, because I'm not bright, it's 9:30, I've dealt with 3 kids all day, I don't know how much I have left, but what exactly is aquaculture by definition?
The cultivation of aquatic animals or plants in controlled or semi-controlled environments. And so there's varying realms of aquaculture in different capacities, being species dependent, whether you're growing finfish, algae, kelp, or shellfish. And each of them has their own set of requirements. Our form of aquaculture and shellfish aquaculture is very benign. We grow oysters that we receive from a hatchery, and all the food that the oysters need is provided by the environment itself. There's no additive other than the labor and the equipment that we put into cultivating them.
That's awesome. So here's me, the former English teacher, realizing aquaculture is just a Latin, we take agriculture, we put aquaculture on, and it kind of works. So it's farming the water, basically. Basically,
and the reason I really wanted to get into it is because it's a sustainable domestic food supply for our own country, rather than relying on imports for our seafood consumption. 50% of our seafood consumption is imported, and
Wow.
nearly 90% of that is aquaculture reared. So we're already importing and eating a huge amount of aquaculture reared seafood. So why don't we produce it here, and
Right.
produce jobs and have a green economy here with it?
Yeah, and I mean, that seems so logical to me, but as we had discussed on the trip out to see your processing station there, for as intelligent, like, this is episode 40 of a food podcast. You would think I would know where the hell an oyster came from day one, but I had no idea. And why do you think it is that this is such a, I don't want to say foreign concept, because, if you bring up, like, the topic of raw bar, people will jump right on it. Oh, I love raw bar. I love raw bar. Ask them how an oyster comes to be. I think they might be as confused as I was. So why do you think that's so alien almost, culturally? Or is it just geographical? Is it because we're down here and you folks are up there?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the educational component of how our food is derived in this country. There's a lot of disconnect from, say, people picking up food at the supermarket and preparing it in their homes as to how that food was produced to begin with. So I think a lot of people have become involved recently in knowing how their food is produced, where it comes from, who produces it, and taking pride in the knowledge of that, of what they're actually putting in their bodies.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really kind of, the educational component has increased in that capacity to inform the consumer as to where their choices lie in buying their produce, meats, and poultry,
yeah,
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, totally. And this gets into a handful of guests on the show. The Blind Pig right here in Bloomsburg on Iron Street, several others, really focus on the farm-to-table element. And really farm-to-table is making the end recipient, the diner, aware of what they're getting. And as I think I kind of fanboy gushed to you, realizing when I pulled in the driveway of our little cottage that, 400 feet away, here was this place that had its own specific oyster breed, which we'll get to here in a minute, and it was 400 feet away. And then to take the trip out to see where it came from, I mean, I really, that might, no, it isn't might, that was the highlight of our week up there, because I came into the knowledge of where these things come from. I think it's so easy, like you said, to just go to your grocery store. Oh, well, chicken breasts come from a styrofoam package. No, they come from a farm. They're raised. They're, and oysters are no different. So that's an amazing thing to just know, and that's aquaculture, I guess, at its core.
It is, and that's a direct farm-to-consumer relationship that, I take a lot of pride in, supplying people that come to us, looking for that knowledge and that product,
Yeah, I mean, that was farm to table at its goddamn finest. 400 feet away, I don't know that I've had shit that fresh ever in my life unless I've caught it, and I'm a horrible fisherman, so... There's that. So going back to, obviously, New England has been your stomping ground since day one. And shellfish in general, shellfish and seafood in general, I should say, are a bit more, commonplace staple up there. But were you growing up like a picky eater, or did you find yourself gravitating towards all this good stuff early on?
I basically got involved. Originally, when I started studying aquaculture, I thought shellfish were boring because they didn't really do anything,
Mm-hmm.
So I was more interested in finfish aquaculture at the time. But growing up, I just loved fishing. I loved being on the water, and thought that that's where going to be. It wasn't necessarily that I was a picky eater or I grew up eating a lot of shellfish or any of that, but these are just kind of acquired tastes that have, that have kind of been able to build my career through.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And fast forward to today, holy shit, talk about capitalizing on a good thing. And I think, speaking of, being a picky eater or not, all three of my boys actually really dig on the seafood. But Wesley, my oldest, had his first half shell, and it was a Chatham, so
great.
And he dug on it. He dug on it very, very, very hard. So
well, there's a huge nutritional value to the product, and also the amount of ecosystem services that are associated with consuming the product as well. From how it's produced and what it does in the waterway.
Oh my, for sure. Now, speak to that nutritional end game, because here again, just like farming them, I'm pretty clueless. I know they taste good. I know they're amazing. I know they're like the perfect encapsulation of the water from which they came. But talk to me about the nutritional angle.
Well, they're high in zinc for one, and so that's always been a pretty good element to have intake of. Mm-hmm. And they've got a pretty good protein presence. But, I think it's like a chicken soup of the sea kind of thing when you eat oysters. Yeah. I always like eating an oyster. You're feeling a little down or whatever, I always pop a couple, and, it kind of perks me up a little bit. So I know they've got lots of nutrients. They've got a good range of vitamins. I can't cite specifically, what values of each, but
you don't have the RDA right on hand, Steve?
No, I don't have that. But can't be too bad for you.
No, and the cool, just amazing part of it, and I'm going to use the word cool, amazing, intent, like constantly, because it was just such a religious experience for me, being such a raw guy. And the first time I came down the hill and I grabbed a bag of 3 dozen, and you handed me the green handled knife, and I had shucked a couple times before, not many, but God Almighty, by the end of the week, not only was eating them a positive experience, but the whole, it really felt like the first time I had cooked a meal, shucking these and making them pretty on that amazing platter, which we're going to talk all about your site, all about the merch here in a little bit, but setting them up on that half shell plate, it looks so gorgeous. I mean, people on Facebook were getting sick of me posting every time I chuck half a dozen, plate them up, make them look pretty. They'd get mad, but I think they were a little jealous, but that's just me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree with you that it's, you're feeling a little sluggish, a little down, a little whatever. Eat some oysters. Get them in you. They're good for you.
Absolutely.
They're good for you.
If you don't want to eat them raw, you can always pop them on the grill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, people popping them on the grill, and anybody who eats raw that gives people shit for cooking their oysters, that's like the people who run marathons who give people shit for putting in earbuds and listening to music. It's fine. It doesn't matter. You do what you want. You do what makes you feel good. I think they're just an awesome food. Awesome food front to back. Front to back.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you go and you snag this degree in a field I never knew about before, which now I'm just insanely interested in, and you seemingly just walk on to what to me seems to be the greatest shellfish company I've ever come into, Chatham Shellfish. And that was, 2001 or 3?
2000 is when I began working there.
2000 you started working there. When did you decide that, hey, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to try to be in the oyster game? When I first got offered the position,
I thought it would be a great seasonal experience. I was still in college at the time, and had a couple of years left of school, so I thought it would be great to get the real world experience in the production end of the industry. And while I was there, my first year, my now business partner then said, how would you like to run this someday? And I thought it was, really just something that I really hadn't thought about much. And then said, well, rather than saying, I want to run it, let me show you that I can, kind of thing. And so it was, for me, it was almost like a life goal to achieve, a level of being able to, run an operation like this.
Yeah.
That it became a personal endeavor of mine in that capacity.
And I mean, look at it. From personal experience alone, I can say you are absolutely doing it. You absolutely embody like that operation. That operation coming down the hill. And I noticed this in general with the people in the area, but you especially, the boys, my older two boys came away saying, God, Captain Steve was awesome. Captain Steve was awesome. I'm like, why? Why? Tell me why. And they said, he just seemed like such a fisherman. And like when you're talking to an 8 and a 6-year-old, I don't think you get higher praise than that right there. Like that's what they expected. And I mean, from 2000 on, here you are basically driving that ship, no pun intended. That's what you've done. That's what you've, 2000 to today, 16 years. That's a long time, man. Yeah,
it is. And, for being 37 years old, but, it kind of feels good to be, in a position like this with this much experience in one thing of growing oysters,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm sure it does. And so, you started there in 2000. When did it become your operation?
Well, became a partner in the business, I believe, in 2003 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been, been a partner to John Richards for about 12 years now.
Nice. And John Richards is the guy that started it in 76?
Yeah, he started it in 1976.
Holy
and
shit.
He learned the business from another gentleman in town called, his name was Clint Hammond, and he had one of the last oyster grants in Oyster River prior to the oyster grants being discontinued. So John, had some experience in it, and he wanted to do it on his own.
Yeah.
So he went through the process of becoming licensed and permitted, and it required special town meetings and state approvals, U.S. Corps of Army Engineers, et cetera, to get the site. And we've been renewing our lease here for 40 years. So
wow. And you said when we were out that day on the water that he really engineered some of the more innovative processes with regards to farming oysters. Is that true?
That's right. When he first started farming oysters, the prior technology for farming oysters was really non-existent. What the industry would do is they would bring in seed oysters from about 1.5 to 2 inches from Chesapeake Bay and Long Island Sound. They'd come up on schooners and they'd plant them. And this is how Wellfleet did it, Duxbury and all the rest of the areas that had oyster grants back in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And they just throw them all over the bottom on their leases and just let the oysters mature, and then they'd harvest them in the winter time and they'd send them by rail to Boston and New York. And so when John came into it, there was no oyster seed to be brought in from the Chesapeake or Long Island Sound, because a lot of those populations had been decimated by disease. So he had to rely on trying to catch the natural spat from oysters in the environment existing already. And so he'd have to set out bags of dead shell, just empty shell, and try to time when the oysters would release their eggs and sperm naturally, and try to catch that oyster spat on those shells, and then he'd bring them to his grant and try to grow them from there. Mm-hmm. And for the first 10 years, it was a total loss.
Right.
Experiencing 80 to 90% mortalities, and just trying to understand how these animals, could be grown to survive in an economically viable way. So over the years, he had done this, developed a couple of different rack and raft techniques with this, and had some viable oysters. And by this point in the early 80s, there were a couple of hatcheries that had been started, and so he would provide the hatcheries, the survivors of these groups of oysters, which would seemingly beat out the disease and have a good genetic quality to them. And over the course of the next several decades, as the industry has developed, the genetic makeup of the animals has improved through the selective breeding of the disease-resistant and the fastest-growing oysters, that people like John have been able to produce, along with the techniques of growing them, raised off of the bottom in floating bags, and here we are today.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get my head around, even when we weren't out with you, we rented kayaks from John next door, and we're out there, and we see your folks flipping the bags, and we ask questions going out, and I'm thinking questions on the way back, like, how do you just know when it's like good, when it's time, when they're ready, when all this? And sounds to me like literally you worked with the Henry Ford of oysters, almost.
Yeah, almost. I mean, it really is. It is almost like a Henry Ford production line. The way we do things. Managing several million oysters on a 3-acre site.
Several million. I mean, let that soak in. No pun intended. Jesus, everything soak or float or sail is going to be a pun. Horrible. I know. That's insane. That's like a ridiculous amount. When you said when we got back to shore, and you brought the boys over to those little like silos, I think you called them.
That's right.
And you put your hand and you pull them up. You're like, do you know what these are? And you're asking the 8 and 6-year-old. The 39-year-old's going, I don't know what the fuck they are, Steve. Honestly, I have no clue. And to know that contained, what did you say each silo contained?
Yeah, so we had about 18 silos, which are cylindrical tubes with a screen bottom that sit into our floating dock at our facility. And so the screen bottom retains the oyster seed, which is about 2 millimeters in size. So each silo contained about 50,000.
My God.
As those oysters grow, we obviously have to make preparations for increasing the amount of space that they're going to take up.
Yeah.
Down the line.
Listen to me, I'm like, yeah, obviously. I had no idea what these things were. Let's be fair here. I had no idea. But yeah, and having seen it, it makes more sense to me now, but it still is just this thank God there's people who go to school for aquaculture concept. And I wish there were more, because now knowing that this is the oceanic farm to table, it almost makes me angry that we go outside of our own for, you said 50%?
Yeah, at least.
Jesus Christ. And then the 90% was the shellfish, or no?
The 90% is farm raised. So
farm raised, yeah.
So 50% of all imports, or 50% of all domestic seafood consumption is imported, and so 90% of the 50% that we import is all farm raised from other countries.
So why aren't we doing that here? And it really, I mean, it seems like such a, definitely not simple process, but handleable. Like if people would just step up and do it and put in the work, it seems like such a noble pursuit, really. It
really is, especially as, obviously there are many user groups of the waterways, and, I think there can be a balance that can be achieved to make allowances for, a vibrant aquaculture industry, satisfying a lot of our own domestic needs, while also, doing that in a green and responsible way.
Right.
Because a lot of technologies exist to, make this a clean industry.
Sure.
With very little input, other than labor,
Yeah. I mean, really, it's just let them soak, turn them, and it seems like such a, and it was almost relaxing watching people do it. It's like, this is natural. This is what it should be.
There are some very therapeutic methods of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, fishing, fishing, and I'm an atrocity at fishing. I would be an embarrassment anywhere in the Northeast, guaranteed. But even though I'm bad at it, it's like golfing. It's enjoyable. It's relaxing. So I can only imagine that seeing this come to fruition has to almost be therapeutic for you.
Yeah, many ways.
That's amazing. So not only is it therapeutic, you clearly have this drive, this enthusiasm behind it. There's a story you told me, and I'm probably going to get some of the details wrong, which is why I have you right here on the phone, that your Chatham oysters, your wonderful, succulent, beautiful oysters, you shipped a bunch out to a little party called the Aspen Food and Wine Festival?
That's right. We had, we have the opportunity to work with the culinary team at Chatham Bars Inn, right in town, along with some other great local restaurants and resorts. But Chatham Bars Inn was selected by Lexus to represent them at the Aspen Food and Wine Show just a couple of months ago. And so we were, with my dealings with the chef, he asked me to ship in 800 Little Necks, which he prepared. His team prepared a clam bacon, a half shell out of, and then also 1,200 of our oysters that we serve on the half shell to the event participants.
1,200. See, I was just talking to you before the interview started about ordering 36. I all of a sudden have a bit of a inferiority complex about my order. 1,200. 1,200.
1,200. Yeah.
Jesus. And to Aspen Food and Wine, folks, if you've been listening, you've heard people from Top Chef, Chopped, all these shows, like Aspen is their end game. This guy right here, right now, is shipping the shellfish out to them that they're asking for, and that is amazing. I can tell you by direct account. So, I mean, no small task there. And so, being in this gorgeous, gorgeous small town up in Chatham, and then realizing what a dominant presence you are in the industry, that was so awesome to see. And again, to kind of feel the enthusiasm you had for it to teach, my older two boys where the game comes from. I have to wonder, where is it that you draw that enthusiasm from? Is it just because you were raised up there, or is it something deeper than that?
Well, I think it's taking pride in what you're able to produce, and being able to produce such a fine product is what we strive for every day. And there's an expectation by the people that we provide oysters to. Some wholesalers in and around Boston that deal with some of the best chefs in the country, such as Jeremy Seawall and John George's in New York City, and even in and around Chatham, Chef Anthony Cole at Chatham Bars Inn, and James Hackney at Wacquasit. You just develop these relationships, and so you don't want to disappoint anybody that you ship oysters to, so you just strive to produce the best that you can.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, to an extent, up into the 40th episode, everything is like, oh, where do you work? Where do you work? Where do you work? And I've had a handful of Jean-Georges vets on the show, and now to know that you supplied the oysters to them, that's incredible, dude. That kind of brings it all full circle. I mean, we're sitting here, 40th anniversary for Chatham Shellfish, 40th episode for the podcast. That's so almost cosmic. They always say you meet who you need to meet. You get what you need. And I couldn't believe that more fully. But going back to now the 40th anniversary, speaking of, so you're doing all these great things. You've been doing it for 40 years. You have a party coming up, don't you?
Absolutely. We have a 40th anniversary party on Labor Day from 3 to 6 p.m.
Steve, I'm going to make you sad for a minute. I can't make it. I'm sorry. So
I don't know,
Labor Day,
you might be able to fly out, right?
I know. Well, you guys do have a municipal airport there, correct, in Chatham?
We do, yeah.
We've got one here in Bloomsburg. I think I can make this shit happen. I hear a Kickstarter fund happening here. I don't know, but so Labor Day, 3 to 6.
Yep. We have live music. We're going to have some local clam chowder, local steamed mussels, plenty of raw oysters. We're going to have oysters galore, and just going to be a great time with people that have helped support us over the years, and anybody who's really interested in coming down and having a good time for a few hours.
I don't know. Geez, Steve, you're saying oysters. Do you think you have enough there, or got a handful?
I think as long as I can get them out of the water in time for the party, yeah.
That's right. That's right. They are on a clock. They are on a clock for sure. So
yeah.
I imagine Shellfish itself is kind of a mirror image of the culinary industry in that you probably have trends. You probably have other things. And obviously you guys for 40 years, to me, have seemed to do the right thing. Is there anything going on right now in the culture that you wish wasn't?
In the culture
as in
culture
aquaculture, shellfish in general? Like, is there something?
I can't pinpoint anything specifically. I just know that the oyster is a valuable animal to our society, and so that I hope that it remains an important portion of consumers' awareness when they go out to a restaurant to want to enjoy oysters, to know where they came from, to know what kind of things that oysters do when they're raised in our coastal embayments and estuaries, and enjoy them. That's really it.
Yeah.
But we also want to produce other species of shellfish that people enjoy also. Razor clams are a wonderful species, and I've done a little bit of research with those. Almost how they grow a gooey duck on the West Coast.
Yes. Yep.
And the West Coast has a fantastic shellfish aquaculture industry, growing abalone, several different species of oysters, gooey ducks, clams, very big operations. So there's a lot of exciting things in the industry that just keep on building upon themselves and solidifying the shellfish's place in the American diet.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, and that was actually going to be my next question. What's next for Chatham? What's the next 40 talking about? And you said branching out into other shellfish. Anything else that you're really looking to focus on?
Well, I really like the idea of supplying chefs farm to chef and farm to consumer. Through our ability to ship, we can ship the same day of harvest anywhere in the country and have it be received the next day. And really, that freshness, ultimate freshness, is what I think it's really all about. Getting the most impactful flavor profile of those animals when they're shipped that quickly.
Yeah, no joke. And honestly, for folks listening, if you love raw, you've never had a Chatham, I mean, I can tell you from buying 3 dozen and then 2 dozen, 2 days later, I'm like an addict. I kept them in a cooler just on ice. They stayed the week. They were golden. And I think that's the timeline you gave me, Steve. Like, if you keep them on ice, they're good for the week, right?
Yeah, 7 to 10 days. And the longest is probably 10 days. You just want to make sure that you keep them below 45 degrees.
Right.
Specifically in the warmer months. In the winter time, really the best time, in my opinion, to eat oysters is when they're fat. They're full of just a natural fat, and they just have flavor beyond what you can comprehend from a summer oyster. But November through May is really is an ideal time for me to enjoy oysters.
Yeah, no joke. And we're actually, oddly enough, looking to pull a Thanksgiving up there with a home away. So,
oh, great.
Because that's how the nation was founded. It wasn't Turkey. It was a lot of shellfish. Isn't that a correct historical statement?
Yeah, that's right. And Jim Gaffigan, he kind of sums it up in a joke he has. Oh, look, a rock with a snot in it.
Exactly. It's all too true, and yet thank God to the first person who had the balls to pull that one off, because I don't know that it would have been me. I'm just gonna be honest with you. So yeah, man, and so yeah, they stayed solid in my cooler all week. This guy right here, listener, Steve, is gonna get him out to you ASAP. You're gonna fall in love with him. There's gonna be no question of that happening, without a doubt. So, I mean, that's where you're at. That's where you're going. Super stoked. Last section of the question, Steve, and then I swear to God I'll let you go, because I know you're probably going to be on the water at the ass crack of dawn.
Just about. We got a low tide at, I think, about 5:30 tomorrow morning. So.
Oh, my God. You know when we have a low tide here? Never. There's no tide here, Steve.
So get to the bottom of your bottle.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. So without further ado, the after section, again, no one's ever been injured. Now I can say in 40 episodes, I don't foresee it happening here. Questions a little bit more off the cuff. So without further ado, I'm standing... Now, typically I ask this question with, I'm standing in your kitchen. I'm going to say I'm either on your boat or in your cottage down by the water or wherever, and I hear music. Tell me what music I hear fishing with you.
Fishing with me?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So you're going to hear a little bit of John Brown's Body, which is a pretty fun reggae band. I also break out some 1990s and 1980s punk rock.
Who's your go-to band?
Huh?
Who's your go-to band?
Snapcase, Sick of It All.
Oh my God.
listen to some Connecticut hardcore, Hatebreed, etc. So that's it, you know.
Beautiful.
Fun and edgy.
Yeah, oh, totally. Absolutely. All right, fictitious situation. You're going to be stranded on a deserted island, which, yeah, this isn't even fair. He fishes for a living. This isn't fair right now. All right, but you're going to bring 3 foods or food-type items with you. What would they be and why? Realizing the water probably has an ample supply of seafood.
3 food-related items?
Foods or food-related items. Either one.
A bow, a fishing rod, and a pot.
Man,
is all I can come up with.
See, that's awesome. That's actually the most survivalist, functional, like, I do this shit for a living answer I think I've ever gotten in 40 episodes. You know, me, it was beef, bacon, and bourbon. So what does that say about me as a person?
Well, I don't know who's going to have a better time.
I don't know. My time is going to be a hell of a lot more short-lived, Steve. I'm going to be honest with you there. Now, so the impetus for this podcast, and now, you know, slightly sentimental, here we are, 40 episodes in. I can't believe I've been doing this for two and a half years now.
Yeah, congratulations to you.
Thank you, man. Congratulations to you back. I think 40 years in the shellfish industry is a little more impressive, but I appreciate it.
Well, I'm not 40 years in yet, but I happen to enjoy, you know, running a company that is. So
yeah.
I've learned a lot from my predecessor here, and we continue to work together to build upon our efficiencies and processes to increase our abilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, I mean, you've been at it far longer than I. Let's put it that way. But when I first started this show, the impetus for this was an author by the name of Melanie Denea, who, Melanie, if you're listening, I'm sure you're not, but if you are, I'd love to have you on. Melanie Denea wrote My Last Supper. I don't know if you've ever seen this book, Steve.
I don't think so.
So she did My Last Supper and The Next Course. It was a follow-up. Each book, it's a nice big coffee table book, has 50 world-renowned chefs, and they're asked the same set of questions. Same thing as this interview, although slightly augmented, this evening. And it really centers around just getting the uniform replies, or rather the replies to uniform questions, and they all centered around, you know, hey, you're checking out tomorrow. What do you eat? Who's there? What do you listen to? What are you drinking? So I ask you, sir, what would be your ideal Last Supper?
I'd like a haddock baked with herbs and butter, raw oysters, and an elk steak.
And an elk steak in the mix.
That's right.
Ooh. Because we ain't going to run a cholesterol check in the morning. That sounds amazing. Amazing. Who would be there?
Geez, I haven't really thought about that. I'd like to have my parents, my bride, my business partner, and my brothers.
Beautiful. What music would be playing? Same as on the boat in the cottage?
No, we might go tone it down there, get a little bit more contemporary. I'm not really sure.
All right. Very good.
Maybe some Steely Dan.
All right, Steely Dan works. Greta, if you're listening, another Steely Dan fan. It's a super popular choice. I love it. And finally, my good man.
Yep.
What is food to you in a single word?
Freedom.
First ever freedom in 40 episodes. Explain, please, sir.
It's the ultimate expression of how you want to live, in my opinion.
Holy shit.
You know what you want to eat. You'll go to the means to do it, to get it, to make it, and that kind of drives. It can drive an individual, So
yeah.
I can kind of sum it up in that, I think.
Wow, freedom. That is that, and I mean, unfortunately, as we go to higher number episodes, it's so hard to get the first time answer, but that's a first timer right there, and how fitting to wrap the interview with such an embodiment answer of what it is you do. And I mean, when we were riding out on that boat, I looked around, I smelled the smells, I saw the scenes, and I'm just like, God, this guy really lives his dream, and it was apparent to no end on your face as we were just riding out there. So you definitely, sir, I think you're existing in your own professional freedom, if I may be so bold.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
it's an honor.
For sure, man. And it's been an absolute honor to have you on the show this evening. Again, Stephen Wright of Chatham Shellfish Company. Check him out on Twitter at Chatham Oysterman. It's Oysta, no H, no ER, for God's sakes, no. And ChathamOysters.com is the site. Be sure to check out their shop. Your online business presence is amazing, and I'm dead serious. If we could get those by Friday, I'm putting my order in tonight. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, go ahead, do it tonight. Plug it right in, we'll get them shipped out.
I will absolutely do that. Anything else going on for you guys that I can help plug, help boost the signal for?
Here, chef and author Rowan Jacobson has a new book coming out called Essential Oyster, which Chatham gets a section in, and also a book by Jeremy Seawalt and Marion Swaybill at Abbeville Press are doing a book called Oysters: A Celebration in the Raw, which we have several photos of our farm and our oysters featured in as well. So that book is going to be published in September. It will be on our online store, and then the Rowan Jacobson book I think is coming out this fall as well. So
I love it.
If you're interested in learning more about oyster culture and the oyster phenomenon, check those books out.
And why the hell wouldn't you be? Let's be honest. Why wouldn't you be? People, get over the texture, get them going, get them cracking, grill them if you want. We're not going to judge. Again, Steve, thanks so much for coming on this evening. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks. It's been a great pleasure to meet you, your family, and to be involved in your podcast here.
Means a lot, man. Means a lot, man. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode number 40 of the Coarse Grind Podcast. My producer, as always, the voluptuous and lovely Johnny Leland Robinson, a.k.a. the Reverend Johnny Lamoria. Be sure to check out his program, Cinematic Pig's Feet, and every single other little piece of media he is working on. Next episode is going to be number 41. Not going to lie, I have no idea who's coming on, but I guarantee you it's going to be worth a listen, so stay tuned.